Hello everyone, and welcome back to the last episode of getting started with the Helium developer kit. In today's episode we will be sending actual sensor data through the Helium network. We will do this in the following steps. First we will start with the basic RAK code like we did in the last episodes. Then we will make code to receive the sensor data. Then we will package that data and send it over the network. That's the same like we did in the last episode. And then lastly we will decode the received data and display it on Google Sheets. Let's get started with the hardware. You will obviously need the Helium developer kit, a WisBlock core and a WisBlock base, and then we will use the RAK 1902, which is a pressure sensor. If you don't have the RAK Helium developer kit, you can use another sensor. Just the code for the sensor will be a bit different, so just keep that in mind. Then the RAK 1902 is actually an LP22HB, which has a pressure range of 260 to 1260 hectopascal, with a sensor accuracy of plus minus 0.1 hectopascal. A typical output could be 1030.14. This is obviously a problem, like discussed in the last episode, because this has a range greater than 256 and is greater than 255, so we have to do something. So because the sensor is only 0.1 hectopascal accurate, I don't really care about the second decimal point, so I will just basically multiply the value by 10 and then just round it, and then use 2 bytes to send the data. So the value to be sent will be equal to the value of the barometer times 10, then we round it, and then in this case that would be 10,301. And then in the decoder we will then again divide it by 10 to get the actual value. Then the sensor code. If you have a new sensor, I recommend you go to the RAK website if it is a RAK sensor. If it is not, I recommend go to Adafruit because they always have example codes, and I picked most of the code from there. So first we just include all the necessary libraries. Don't forget, if you use this code, which is linked in the description, to install this library. Then we initialize the sensor. I called mine p_sense for pressure sensor. Then in the setup, this is basically all the same like we did in the last episode, so you don't have to touch this. Then we start the serial line with this address and set the polling rate at 1 Hz of the sensor. Then we create a function to get the pressure. So we just use sensor_event.t and then pressure, and then same for temperature. Then we basically get the pressure and the temperature, and then we return the pressure, but we multiply it by 10 and then we round it to get the correct value. So then in the uplink routine we get the data. This is described as a byte. You don't have to use a byte, you can use an integer here. It just doesn't really matter. So we get the data, we get the pressure into the data variable, and then we create a high byte and a low byte from the data variable. Then this is basically code for the battery level. You don't really have to look at this. Then in the payload we just append high byte and low byte, and then again this is battery, but you don't really have to look at this. Then we just send the data, standard function. And then in the decoder we basically just use the high byte, left shift it 8 times, then we add the low byte, and then we divide by 10, and then in Google Sheets you should see the correct data. This was basically it for the episode. Now you know everything you need to know to get started with the RAK Helium developer kit. The workflow is always the same. So you first start with basic RAK code, you make code to receive sensor data, you package that data, and then you decode it. If you have any questions, please leave them below, but now you should be able to send any data over the network from any sensor. Good luck!